Shemar Stewart. Shemar Stewart, a top 10 player in the country, 5-star defensive end, 6'5", 260, give or take. So a massive, massive guy. You could probably flex him inside a little bit in some passing down situations. Probably don't want to put him up at 300 pounds just because he's, a special athlete at the size that he is. That's a guy that everybody's after. That's a guy that Miami's been after for a long time. I know DeMarcus Van Dyke is heavily involved in that recruitment. DeMarcus Van Dyke, who was a 5-star recruit from Monsignor Pace High School, which is where Shemar Stewart goes, So yeah, that's one that everybody's watching. Probably going to go all the way until signing day for his commitment, but we will see. And I would be remiss if I did not mention the fact of his name specifically having come up as the other or next target for Deion Sanders at Jacksonville State. Not Jacksonville State, excuse me, Jackson State.
Everyone's doing that, by the way.
I just went too fast, and I know it's Jackson State.
I know you know.
Right, yeah. But it's one of those things. So, but Jackson State, his name is specifically Shemar Stewart's been mentioned in that, going and playing with Travis Hunter, which, obviously with Travis Hunter kind of singularly changing the game in recruiting is not as crazy as, or outlandish or incomprehensible or shocking or surprising or whatever word you want to have. It is not as much that as it was 8 hours ago before Travis Hunter, made his decision known. But Miami's going to fight to the end. Texas A&M is in prime position for Shemar Stewart. He's visited there. He just visited there recently and then came back and was working out the next day. And Jimbo Fisher is pushing for a recruiting title this year. He's up there in the top 2, I want to say. But at one point today, Texas A&M's recruiting class was top 2 and not 2. You know what I mean? They went up all the way up to the number 1 spot. And that would be a big win for him to get another major defensive lineman from South Florida, like Donnell Harris a couple cycles ago, and to add to, like I said, Anthony Lucas and a bunch of other guys that are obviously in that class. Because if you're in the conversation for number 1, that's not just because of one player. So yeah, but Miami is going to continue to chop that wood, continue to swing away at Shemar Stewart. And he's a guy that, we desperately want as well. And again, remember, if it was Shemar Stewart, Marvin Jones, Nigel Kelly, Jesus, I forget his name, the kid at Chaminade as a defensive end, and Dante Anderson from Homestead, who fell down the list a little bit, but he and his teammate Daniel Lyons both signed with Florida State as borderline 4-star guys. So, that's, again, some decent talent that's going up there. But you already have one of those guys. And just like the Palmetto 5 last year, I said, if you get 2 of those guys, that's holding serve. And that's getting the talent that you need from where you need it from on the roster. If you get 3 of those guys, and then that's a home run. Obviously, we only have 1 and are really chasing the second of those guys. Kenyatta Jackson, from Chaminade was the other name that just came to me. But yeah, so we already have 1 of those 5 elite defensive linemen signed to Miami. And like I said, par for the course really needs to be 2 of those 5. And to get to 2, that would be, with and through Shemar Stewart. So hopefully we're able to get that. In terms of a running back in this class, if there's not a Cody Brown, you know what I mean? Like a top 15 back who is, in the top 200 nationally, who was let out of an NLI or, something late, I don't personally see it. I see us trying to leverage some of the other skill position talent on the team, maybe a Brashard Smith flexing into the backfield. Again, if you put Malik Curtis on offense, you can use that speed on every single snap. I've been saying it since I first saw the film. I think that you go that route instead. And because you got Chaney, you got Knighton, you got Franklin, you got Brown, right? So if you bring in one, you're going to bring in a running back for depth, but they're probably not going to play this year. So you can get somebody from the portal, or you can get somebody from high school. But if we're only with 8 commits and we have other pressing needs on the roster, I would look elsewhere than running back in this class, and then maybe try to, get a really top end one next year, or maybe even double up. But the necessity for a running back in this class, I don't personally see. However, because I disagree with that, that does not mean that I will demean that thought process. I just don't necessarily subscribe to that process, that we need a running back in this class.
I believe that we're only removed 1 week from a discussion we had about recruiting rankings, and it wasn't just one person in the live chat. It was like a collection of people in the live chat that were stating that recruiting rankings are overrated. Okay, here are the total team talent rankings by 247 Sports, which is a composite of their evaluation of the entire roster of these particular teams right now, not just one class, the entire roster. Alabama number 1, Georgia 2, Ohio State 3, Clemson 4, LSU 5, Oklahoma 6. That is a composite history of the college football playoff since 2014. That is the playoff.
I mean, it's right there. You know, you have to have talent on the roster. You know, Bud Elliott, you know, famous for his blue chip ratio. You got to have more than half of your roster be blue chip guys. You have to have Jimmys and Joes, not just X's and O's. Like, there is a ceiling if you do not have elite talent. There simply is. And there can be an artificial ceiling put in place if you don't have requisite level of coaching, like we've seen at Miami, you know. But to be in that conversation, you know, that conversation for the playoff, for a national championship, things like that, you have to have the talent. And, you know, it's just a fact of life. And yeah, you're going to miss on some guys. You know, it's an art, not a science. You know what I mean? But also, you got guys who are like the Mountain from Game of Thrones. Like, he's freakishly big and surprisingly quick for a man that size. You know, you got a guy like Shemar Stewart who's 6'6", 250. 260, and he moves the way that he does, like a much smaller man, like somebody who's, you know, 6'2", 210, 220, you know, and you got a guy at that size doing it. Like, that matters. You know, if you look at the world of basketball, man, you got these guys who are 6'6", 6'7", 6'8", that kind of speed and skill and dexterity and athleticism. Like, yeah, it was a thing for me to be able to do it at 6 feet tall, right? You know, lower to the ground, sense gravity, you know, handles, I was quick, you know, But then you get somebody with my skills and athleticism or more, and they're 8 inches taller than me. Bro, like, in the world of sports, that matters. And, like, that factors in with recruiting rankings, you know, to a large part. So, you know, I'm not going to discount them. I will say again that it's an art, not a science, and there will be some misses. Jaden Harris, you know, I think is underrated, and then he's going to go up. And also, we've seen some guys who maybe were overrated because they had hit the ceiling for their potential earlier, and then they'd fallen off, like those 19-year-old high school seniors, guys who aged out and things like that. And I'm going to mention a name, and I know he's an outlier because he still did it at college and in the NFL. Grandpa Calvin Ridley, right? This is back the last year before they changed and said you cannot be 19 before the first day of school of your senior year and be eligible for sports in Florida. But the year before that, that rule was not in place. And the rule was you could not play after you turned 19 years and 9 months old, right? So Monarch High School changed their schedule that year because he turned 19 and 9 months on week 4 of the schedule. So they played 3 games and moved their bye week up to week 4 so he could get 3 games of senior film. Then he aged out at 19 years and 9 months. And then they went through and they rebuilt the offense without him being eligible. Now, again, I know that he continued that performance throughout the rest of his career, but there are other guys of that same age range who would go and dominate. And then they would get, you know, like 4-star, 5-star, and they get to college and be like, oh, no, like this dude's 20 when he comes to college, and there is no ceiling for potential. He's not Chris Graves, who's not going to turn 18 till the end of fall camp. Difference. You know what I mean? But yeah, it's an art, not a science, but recruiting rankings do matter. You have to have that kind of talent, and there's too many people. And look, everybody can be a recruiting analyst. Like, I'm sorry to, you know, like shatter your brains and everything. Like, I'm not the only person who can do this. The guys who are paid from On3 Sports and 247 and ESPN and Rivals and wherever else, they're not the only people who can do this. You can go out and you can look at a game and say, look, this guy is different. And the first time I saw Calvin Ridley, that was when Miramar played Monarch in the playoffs his junior year. And the player that everybody was on was Sean Burgess-Becker, his teammate. Say, okay, number 2, this is the guy. He's the guy who's going to go to Miami because they were both, well, he was thought to go to Miami at the time. Right, okay, cool. And we're looking at number two. And I'm in the press box and I'm calling the plays. I'm calling who did what and went where. And I'm like, who's number 8? They're like, no, it's number. I was like, no, who's number 8? Because I'm watching with these eyes and this brain that works. And number 8 is out there doing the stuff that I thought 2 was going to do. Number 8 is doing all of that and more, right? So you can see these things, man. But it's just, it is art, not a science. But recruiting rankings do matter. You have to have the top level talent on your team. You just do. And it's no small accident that so many different coaches and so many different programs are all after the same guys. There's reasons for that.
When you read off the top 6 currently in rosters, and that is exactly what the playoff has looked like. No more or no less. That's exactly the playoff. Those have been all the teams involved repeatedly. To the minute right now, we've got Texas A&M 1, Alabama 2, Georgia 3, Ohio State 4, Texas 5, Penn State having a nice year, number 6.